I mentioned to you earlier that one of the reasons why I was a bit embarrassed in the first hour to realise that I had fallen victim to a conflation of refugee status with permanence, and that's why the scenes of people returning joyously to Damascus in particular and to Syria in general were so moving, but also accompanied by that penny drop moment, which was, of course, almost all refugees want to go home. Certainly in the first instance, the first years, months after leaving their homes, they think of little else. We want to go home, and yet that is so absent from the debate. One of the reasons I was particularly embarrassed to realise that I'd fallen into that trap was because of Hassan Akkad, a filmmaker and writer, and, as I'm sure he won't mind me mentioning, an NHS hospital cleaner during the lockdowns, because he told me his story a few years ago on Full Disclosure, my podcast series, where you can also hear an episode with Gabor Mate, actually, who Karine was just referring to in the last call. And I should have had it. I should have had that more in the forefront of my mind as I watched the events unfolding over the course of the weekend. But still a timely moment to catch up with Hassan, who fled. Well, you feared for your life during the civil war. So let's begin at the end, if we will, or at least let's begin with where we are now, Hassan. How have you greeted the events and scenes in your hometown?
Hi, James. The last two nights, I still wake up in the morning, and the first thing I do is that I check my phone to check that it actually happened, because I still think it's I still don't believe that it's happened. I still don't believe that we finally Syria has finally been liberated by Syrians from 50 years of tyranny, from 50 years of the worst dictatorship in modern history. I'm full of joy and happiness, and I can't believe that I left Damascus nearly 12 years ago, and I will be able to go back to go back to Damascus now. I can't believe that this is. I never thought that this was going to happen in my lifetime.
A quick word then on the circumstances in which you left. As I say, there's a full account of your life story really on the Full Disclosure podcast that we did during lockdown. But I mean, your experience was a little out of the ordinary, given at one point the face-to-face encounter you had.
So in the early days of the revolution, of the uprising, before it was a
Yes.
civil war, it was a peaceful uprising. It was a revolution of Syrians like me who were on the streets chanting freedom as a result of the Arab Spring. Syrians who took to the streets calling for freedom and liberty and democracy. And the way that these people were treated, including myself, is that they were either killed or arrested and tortured. I was detained twice. I still bear the scars on my arms from what happened to me in detention. And after my first detention, when Bashar al-Assad back then in early 2012, he wanted to present himself as this modern leader, he started meeting different segments of society. And I happened to get the chance to meet him. And I said, and those were my exact words, and God marked my word. I told him that you are fighting your people. You are detaining and torturing your people. One day you are doomed to fall. Those were my exact words. I told him, one day you're going to go. And then he smirked. He smirked. He looked at me. We were in the palace. He looked at me and he said, well, we fought in the 80s. He was referencing the Hama massacre that happened in the 80s, when his father killed 40,000 people. He said, well, we fought in the 80s and we won, and we will win again. And look at him now. He fled Syria like a little rat in the dark. He fled Syria and he became the refugee that he made. Half of Syria was made refugees. 13 million Syrians, between 7 million refugees and 5 IDPs. And now he is the refugee. So I can't. It's really hard to put into words.
You're doing
James,
all right.
The feeling.
You're doing all right, Hassan. You're doing all right.
Yeah.
You always do.
Yeah.
Before we get on to your hopes for the future, a word, if you would, and I don't want any modesty here, okay? Because lots of people wouldn't have gone out onto the streets in those moments. Good people. But they wouldn't have had the courage, if that's the right word. That's why I say I don't want any modesty here. Why did you, knowing what had happened in the 80s, knowing what the new regime or newish regime was likely to emulate the old regime, why did you go out and do things that other people were being killed for doing?
I did that, James, because the videos that everyone is watching right now that are coming out from detention of the people who've lost their minds, of the women who were raped, of the toddlers in prisons, the pictures that we're getting of body bags that are being found. Syrians knew about this for a long time. I had a cousin who was in Palmyra prison who was there for 16 years. We know these things. Syrians know these things, and we've been telling the world for the last 12 years. This is what's happening in Syria. This is why we are fleeing Syria. We've been calling for the international community, but the international community failed Syria. Syria was failed. Fadl Abdelghani, the director of the Syrian Network for Human Rights, yesterday said, and he confirmed what none of us wanted to hear, that the 100,000 plus detainees and disappeared in Syria are killed. They have been we know that they have been killed. We never wanted none of us wanted to hear this. We were hoping the families can you imagine the 100,000 families who've been in limbo, the uncertainty, hoping that one day that they're going to be reunited with their loved ones. Now they are confirmed dead. We knew about these things. That's why we protested. That's why we went on around the world telling the world. We wrote books. We went on podcasts. We interviewed. We did everything. The Syrian society, the Syrian diaspora, did everything that we can to tell the world, but the world failed us.
Because in the end, as you said at the very outset, this is by Syrians for Syrians. You will be following events more closely than almost anybody else. And obviously there are some early concerns about the past associations of the leader of the rebellion. The early signs, I think, are positive. Are you confident that they will stay positive?
Listen, the things on the ground right now are like there's a vacuum of power right now. Yeah. The leader, I'm telling you again, we have half a century of Assad power. So Syria isn't going to be fine in a day. Every conflict will be there. There's going to be chaos. The amount of weapons. James, I want to tell you something. The reason why he fled like this and he left. This is all on purpose, by the way. And he left the army barracks, the security branches were left open. It's because, there are thugs in every society. Because you knew that the thugs are going to come in and loot the weapons and loot the guns, which will eventually tear the fabric of Syrian society even more. I have hopes in the opposition. I have hopes in the rebels. I have hopes that first of all they will be able to manage the amount of weapons that have been looted. Yes. Because of Assad and how he left it, because he didn't do a peaceful transition of power. So I have hope. What right now? What's urgent right now? What's urgent right now is that first of all, I really call on the international community to put some pressure on Israel to stop bombing Damascus. My cousins in Damascus, they told me that they have never witnessed or seen such amount of bombing since the beginning of the war. They have completely decimated the Syrian army. And listen, to argue that they don't want the weapons to fall into the wrong hands and which will affect the state of Israel, okay. But why are they bombing the security branches, James? The security branches contain documents that are very important to the Syrian society. We need these documents. We need to find the war criminals who killed our people. We need to find the war criminals, the Assad thugs who I told you killed 100,000 Syrians. I call the international community to put pressure on Israel to pull their troops out of Syria and to stop the systemic bombing of Syria that's happening right now. Second, what's also hope the international community can do, the Syrian hospitals are struggling to cope. Syria needs help on every front. Syria is a failed state. The economy has tanked. 75% of the infrastructure was destroyed. The people are it's struggling. The country, so we need help on every front. And what follows this is that we need experts to help the Syrian civil society, to help the heroes of the white helmet, who everyone, even some voices in Britain, were accusing them of the most heinous things. Sitting MPs right now were accusing the white helmet of being Al-Qaeda and all of this rubbish that they were saying. We need experts to help the Syrian civil society to locate the mass graves. 100,000 people were killed. This is Syria's holocaust. We need them to help us find these mass graves because we need to find the evidence, because you cannot rebuild Syria without justice. Rebuilding a society will start with justice. The Syrian society is
Hey, hey, hey,
the
hey.
fabric of the Syrian society is torn. We need justice. And we cannot have justice if we don't find the evidence and if we don't get these criminals to court.
And that will involve outside
Sorry, I
help.
didn't mean to get emotional, but this is really
Hassan,
hard.
there
It's
is
really hard.
there is not a human being listening to you who will have anything other than complete understanding for your emotion, myself included. Obviously, because your work in this field has been so, it's defined your life, hasn't it, for the last 12 years. I would like to not return, but I would like to ask you what images of your home have struck you most. What are the actual scenes that you thought, listen, the urgent case for rebuilding and healing notwithstanding, and the absolutely crucial role that the international community and the British government must play in that process. But I do wonder, as a friend, what images have struck you most? What have been the most, if I could use the word, beautiful scenes that you've seen in the last few days?
Don't want to focus this. Listen, everything that is Syria associated with for the last 13 years is blood and destruction. Every time I tell someone that I am Syrian, the first thing they can think of is destruction and blood and dingies and refugees. Syrians are beautiful people. Our country is a gorgeous country. They are. Listen, I don't want to focus on the misery, because if you want to see the misery, go on Twitter, go on all social, you'll see. I don't want to talk about what I've seen. I swear to God, I haven't slept for more than 2 hours in the last week from the things that I've seen that are being uncovered. But what I've also seen, the things that stayed with me, is that the people are reuniting with their families. I don't know if you saw the clips of people after 10, 20, 30 years hugging their mothers. I've seen people, the first thing when they arrive to Syria is going to the cemetery to visit the death that they couldn't say goodbye to because of living in exile. These images really stayed with me. There's nothing more important than family. So the scenes of people hugging their dads, their granddads, they're hugging their moms, the scenes of, I can't, James, I just can't
No,
talk
okay,
anymore.
I won't. That's it. I won't keep you any longer, except to ask, when do you think you're going to get back?
I was planning on going on the 20th of December, but my cousins have told me to hold back a little bit because I don't also listen. There's quite a lot of people who are going, Syrians, non-Syrians, and this is putting pressure on a country that is, we need, in the future, we need everyone to go to Syria. Syrians, non-Syrians, we need people to come and visit our beautiful country and see it and all of this. But I don't want to put pressure. I don't want to go there's queues for bread, there's queues for like the necessities. I don't want to go just I don't want to be selfish. So I'm just waiting for things to get a tiny little bit more better, and then to be able to. And James, I want you to come. I want you to come. I want to show you where I live. I want you to come and sit on my balcony. I have the most beautiful balcony in Damascus. You can see all of the city. You're coming to visit me.
It's a date.
Inshallah.
Hassan Akkad, thank you. And try to get some sleep, my friend, won't you?
I will.
God bless you. Take care.